Welcome to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for October 21, 2021. The agenda, documents, and minutes are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. For anyone wishing to speak today, hopefully you've previously notified staff. If you're the applicant, you will be acknowledged to speak at the appropriate time. If you're not the applicant and you would like to speak, hopefully you've already filled out one of these white forms at the front there, and these are generally for people protesting or supporting an application that are not the applicant. And if you fill one out and get that to us, we'll recognize you at the appropriate time. We'll call the case, and then I'll recognize the applicant or representative to speak, and then I'll recognize any supporters, and then any protests, and then we will close with the applicant speaking. Public comment will then be closed unless specifically reopened by me or another board member. The board will then deliberate and vote. For speakers other than the applicant, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Consistent with the city's official proclamation, city employees are required to wear masks during the proceeding, and everyone else is strongly encouraged to wear a mask. They're available outside if you did not bring one. If several people have the same or similar comments, please respect the time of the board and designate one speaker to speak on behalf of that position. Those individuals will be given more than 3 minutes and will allow others to add any additional or new information if necessary. If you arrive after your item has been heard, or if you have a different matter to raise with the board, you'll be allowed to speak under the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda. Board members will be allowed to ask questions and make comments at any time during the meeting. Please do not interrupt board members while they're speaking because we need a clear record and it makes the meetings go by much faster. Before you begin with your comments, please identify yourself by stating your name and your address, and this meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the October 7th, 2021 meeting. Do we have any changes or a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the October 7th, 2021 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the minutes are approved. And as those of you that are familiar with Board of Adjustment proceedings have probably already recognized, we have 3 board members today instead of 5. And for any motion to pass, you'll need a unanimous vote of all 3 members of the board. So if that changes the dynamics of your application, consider requesting a continuance or addressing that with the board at the appropriate time. The next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. Do we have any? Okay, I didn't see any. Is there anyone that had an application that is wishing to seek a continuance at this time? Okay. We'll move on to items on the consent docket. Seeing none, we'll move to items requiring a separate vote.
First item for public hearing is item 1, case 14-927. That's a request of Robert Gibson for a variance to accessory building regulations at 13501 High Sierra Boulevard.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay. If you wanted to introduce yourself by name and address and present your application. Or your representative, either one. Sure. Okay.
Broadway Avenue on behalf of the applicant. As set forth in the application and mentioned foregoing, the applicant is looking for a variance from Chapter 59, Section 1220C2B of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, which requires that all such buildings or all outbuildings located on lots sized between 1/2 acre and 1.5 acres be set back at least 25 feet from the side and rear yard property lines. As set forth in the staff report, in order for the board to grant such a variance, a finding must be made that the application complies with the elements of Chapter 11, Section 44-107 of the Oklahoma statutes regarding proving an undue hardship. The undue hardship is peculiar to the piece of property, and that the undue hardship does not, or that the granting of a variance does not interfere with the substantial justice or the public interest. Here, our memo, which was submitted in connection with our application, attempted to show that the Oklahoma courts have consistently interpreted that the elements of the statute are so interwoven that It unfolds or is distilled into a single analysis regarding how the granting of this variance would afford substantial justice as between the applicant and the public interest. In our opinion, it does. As the members of the board know, setback requirements for structures are, like all ordinances, meant to promote the health, safety, and well-being of the city's residents. Among other things, setbacks are meant to preserve sightlines for pedestrians and drivers, as well as to prevent encroachments onto neighboring properties. In the matter at hand, the applicant's proposed location is located in the northwest corner of his backyard at a location which seeks to preserve the existing features, such as the trees, while also keeping the functionality of the backyard open to public gatherings for family and friends by keeping a comfortable distance between it and the other existing improvements shown above. Speaking to the public interest, the proposed location of the structure, which again is 280 feet from the road, and to our knowledge, has met with no opposition from the neighboring property owners and the HOA. To this point, included with the application was the restrictive covenants for the neighborhood and the HOA approval. The restrictive covenants, section 403 of which state that if an outbuilding is located more than 80 feet from that front property line, the HOA's proposed setbacks were 5 feet, which is within where we're asking for a variance. Further, the applicant has gone to the HOA and secured approval, as well as spoken to his neighbors both directly, and we provide notice in connection with this application. No opposition, to our knowledge, has occurred. Further, in connection with those neighboring property owners, this location does not encroach onto those neighboring properties or impair their sight lines. Both are rural agricultural and contain large, unimproved backyards. Knowing all of this and seeing the staff report, we just ask you to consider if the enforcement of a 25-foot setback with no variance in this situation actually protects or improves the public interest at all. Finally, in connection with this, we know that there has been mention of a 7.5-foot utility easement to the northern part of the property. We acknowledge that at least the overhang of the proposed structure will encroach onto that easement, and the applicant is aware of that and fully accepts the risks of such encroachment. Still, while the applicant's strong preference would be for the variance to be granted as requested in the application, the applicant is willing to consider relocation or a little less of a variance, maybe to 15 feet or 17.5 feet, which would make it 5 or 7.5 feet removed or 10 feet removed from the northern western boundary lines, in order to alleviate any concerns with this easement. Based on the foregoing, whether the variance is as requested or modified to remove the encroachment, we believe, in light of no objections and in light of satisfying any real concerns of the purpose behind setbacks, we believe that it affords substantial justice as between the applicant and the public interest. The applicant, Robert Gibson, would like a couple of minutes just to speak on the particulars and the construction existing at this time.
Oh, goodness, sorry, guys. Don't
It doesn't
touch the
like to
mic.
be touched. Yeah.
Don't touch the mic. My particular backyard, I have a pool house in the back, and I would like to keep this structure at a distance. I have a bunch of trees all over the backyard too, so I would have to rip out 3 or 4 major trees I did not want to rip out. I'm also going to do something with my pool, and so I'm trying to keep it back in the far distance as possible. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. So that's about it.
What's that other building that already exists over there?
I'm sorry?
What's that other building that already exists over
It's
there?
a little guest house.
Like a pool
It has a
cabana.
pool house. It's kind of
Yeah.
connected to the pool side.
That's what it looked like, but just wanted to confirm. I'll first compliment you and your council. Your brief was well done, and I always like seeing well-researched briefs, and so I thought that was well done, kind of outlining the board's authority and how courts have interpreted that, so I appreciate that
Yeah.
on behalf of the board. The one thing that I think, at least me personally, the other board members may feel differently, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about the hardship, because I see a lot about sort of why you should be able to put that building where you want to put it, but one of the elements we have to meet by statute is a showing of a hardship, and so
Well, there's some
I guess-
major trees there that I'm gonna have to rip out.
Okay.
It's just gonna be, it's difficult to get back in there already. So with the other little guest house there, so accessibility is gonna be difficult. And those 2 or 3 big trees are, I really don't wanna rip them out, but,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Trees are very important, so
well,
I
they're
agree.
huge trees,
Yeah,
so it's gonna take me a lot of effort to get them out of there.
Yeah.
Actually, there's 2 trees there, and there's 2 trees over there behind the pool house as well, that I would have to take all 4 trees out. And it just does, if I have to put it farther in my backyard, it takes all that space out that I'm wanting to use as my backyard. So it just kind of cramps the whole backyard. I know it's a big lot, but still,
Yeah, and I mean, part of that could be sort of self-imposed by this other existing guest house structure.
yeah.
But, I see your point. The other obvious point that your counsel pointed out, and also I think for the purposes of the board, I don't think we can provide a variance or any relief from the utility easement. I don't think it's even, and JJ, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can vary to allow you to encroach into a utility easement. And so there's going to be some modification to the variance, or to the request, if I'm understanding correctly.
That's correct. The variance will have no effect on the utility easement. He'll have to locate the building outside that.
I think to be approved, they would say, big deal, you have a variance, but they can't vary into this utility easement. And so we're looking at a minimum of 7.5 feet, at least on that setback anyway. I mean, it's a huge variance. I don't know how familiar you are with our proceedings, but normally we deal with a couple of feet here and there. And so what this request is a huge variance. It's one of the few applications, the types of applications that we see where there are not favorable considerations, there are only unfavorable considerations in the staff report. Board members, I don't know if you have any questions or comments before we open it up, but.
So you're saying, just so I can clarify, that I could get a slight variance just outside the easement
That would be,
would be what you would want to grant?
I think that, for me personally, that would be at minimum. I mean,
Okay.
we don't have discretion in that regard.
Okay.
I mean, I guess we do, but it'd be unenforceable.
Anything would help,
Yeah, okay.
honestly.
Board members, questions or comments?
From what I got from the initial comments was we're not at the minimum needed, so I'd like to at least get to that,
Yeah,
as his counsel alluded to.
yeah. I think this one would make more sense to me if we knew, so I shouldn't say the only hardship, but the primary hardship I see is having to tear out those old trees. And I don't want people tearing down old trees unnecessarily unless they have to. So I would sort of like to get a better understanding of how we can hit that element that we have to meet by statute, that it's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. And so I'll tell the board kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking closer to 10 to 15 foot setback instead of what's been requested here, which is 3 to 5 and 5 to 6. I was thinking closer to 10 to 15, and then seeing what that location would look like for the hardship. And so how many trees you'd have to knock down in order to meet that. And that to me would get closer to meeting the minimum necessary element that we have to find. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, board members. And if you're okay with the application as is, that we can talk about that as well. But
No, I'd like to see a little bit more on there. That's pretty big variance.
Yeah. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone out other than the applicant and the representative that we're hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Board members, I can't make a motion, so.
So I'm having a hard time understanding you.
Yeah, I'm more so talking to the board
So,
members, but
Okay.
I,
Could we do a compromise and maybe cut that back just a tad?
what do you mean by that?
Well, you said 10 to 15, is that,
Yeah,
What-
I think
what would we?
Robert's already kind of looked in anticipation of this and knowing the issues with the easement about what would work and regarding the existing trees and foliage. He was comfortable, I believe, with the 10-foot setback from the rear and side yards. I think when we go beyond that, that's when, I mean, there are issues with the trees and everything. And I know for your personal preference, you kind of wanted a resolution today instead of,
Yeah, I'm ready to get this over with.
Continuance,
I'm ready to
but-
get on with what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, I understand.
I think I could live with 10 feet. With that size of building, that's more reasonable than 5 for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, I propose that kind of range, so I can get on board with that. And given the area that this is in, I think, and the size of the land and all that, I think I can get on board with it. But what I can't do is make a motion, so is there
Do, 10 on each side?
okay.
I'll move to approve case number 14927 with the condition that the rear and side setbacks are no more than 10 feet.
I'll second it.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 14927 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a variance of no more than 10 feet on each side, so approved as modified. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, case 14936, request of Dodson Properties for a variance to a moratorium that prohibits freestanding signs over 200 square feet located at 4000 East Hefner Road.
My name's Craig Honeywell with Quick Trip, 1120 North Industrial Boulevard, Euless, Texas. Thank you guys for your time today. We're obviously here due to the moratorium and ordinance number 26451, seeking a variance for sign square footage. Currently, the underlying code that we're seeking would allow for 700 square feet. The ordinance requires us to have a variance for anything over 200 square feet. From discussions with staff, we believe pending code would allow for the underlying zoning of 300 square feet in the future. Once this ordinance is lifted and new code is approved. The driving reason behind us seeking a variance for additional square feet is driver visibility along I-35. As you can see on the southwest corner of I-35 in Hefner is a property location. Our site sets about 500 feet off at the travel lanes of I-35, and the southbound exit lane is about 1,300 feet to the north of our property and sign location. That distance is really what's driving the hardship and the need for us on this one. The extent that we're asking for of 312 feet is driven by the pricer size underneath our QT logo. The height of the numbers is very indicative of how far away visibility is, legibility works for those signs. At about 1,300 feet, the recommended height for easy legibility is 130 inches for font height. We're asking for 96 based on the renderings you have for that sign. Our belief is lowering it to this amount allows for adequate visibility for motorists while reducing any impacts on the community as a whole. I'll reserve the rest of my time for your all's questions.
I struggled with this application, I think for obvious reasons. First, I'll say I think the 700 square feet is sort of the maximum that you would hope to get if it's rezoned, but my understanding is in the current zoning, it is limited to 200. That's my current understanding. I know the application states that you're expecting that with the code update, you'd be limited to 300, and so essentially you're seeking 12.7 square feet in addition to what you're expecting the code adjustment or the code update to allow. My understanding from representatives of the city is that the most recent iteration of the code update is going to allow 270 square feet, 275, something in that neighborhood. And not that at the time that you submitted your application, it probably was 300, but my understanding is the most recent draft is 270, 275. I'm sort of struggling with this on sort of principled grounds, because how I sort of see it from 30,000 feet is City Council said they don't want any application in excess of 200 square feet making its way to the Planning Commission. The ordinance says a number, again, in the first recitals, it says there have been a number of rezoning applications recently requesting PUDs and SPUDs wherein large freestanding signs have been requested which otherwise would not be allowed within the existing zoning district. And that seems like exactly what we have here. You would not currently be allowed that, and the City Council wants to put a stop to those, at least temporarily. And so I'm sort of struggling because on the other side of it, we're also not the final determining body that determines whether this gets rezoned. And so essentially what our role is here is to sort of be a gatekeeper to determine whether your application can even make it to Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission can decide whether this size of a sign is appropriate. So there are a lot of different dynamics at play, and it's also sort of a temporary thing that I don't think we're going to see a lot of.
And then we circle back around to the same problem we had before the moratorium.
Right. And my understanding is, and again, this is talking with city officials about this, is that probably for constitutional reasons, there needed to be an appeal mechanism so that whenever you submitted the application that's in excess of the moratorium and that gets denied, you have to have some kind of appeal mechanism. And the best fitting body for that was this board, and that's why it's here. So even though it's a bit unusual, that's why we're here today. So those are the dynamics at play. In my mind, I don't know if you want to talk about any of those.
Yeah, we had several conversations about that early on. Diving into code early on, I believe one of the properties is currently under a PD, and it would allow for 200 square feet, as well as the other property max under its current zoning would be 200 square feet. When we laid out the site and were seeking the PD and became aware of the moratorium, we reduced the size of the QT button as well as the size of the pricers to get as far away from that 700 square feet as we could, because we wanted to meet the intent of the moratorium as well as the future code. And our goal was to not go for, previously CCH zoning would allow for 700 square feet, but really try to minimize the signage as much as we could and still allow visibility, 1,300 feet away to the travel lanes before the exit ramp. And that's how we've landed at 313. It's not really trying to work up to anything. It's trying to reduce the size as much as we can to meet the spirit and intent of the moratorium.
Right. Oh, and I don't think there's any bad faith or anything. I would certainly, that would raise a lot of red flags for me if I thought you were sort of trying to get around the moratorium or try to get around the code update by coming to the board. That would raise a lot of red flags for me, and I wouldn't want to participate in anything like that. But I don't think that's what you're doing here, so that works in your favor. But board members, do you have any questions or comments, the applicant?
Honestly, I'm okay with this. This isn't really the same kind of problem we were having at Planning Commission. They were coming in with just PUDs strictly just for the sign, which, is
And
why
mostly billboards, right?
Right,
Basically,
yeah, and being a gas station, being on I-35 and that far away from the highway, I'm okay with it.
I saw Ms. McDevitt come in. Did you have anything to add or? Okay. I'll kind of tell you where I was on this is we still have to meet the elements that are required by statute, which show that you have to show an unnecessary hardship, something about this property is peculiar. It's not a substantial detriment to the public good or the purposes and intent of the code. And it's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. To me, if we allow this application to make its way to planning, to be consistent with the moratorium, I think that would be limiting the variance to what we expect the code update to allow. And then that makes its way to Planning Commission. So that to me gets it down to what we would allow to continue would be 275, which is the maximum. Is it 270 or 275? Let's make that.
Laura McDevitt in the City Attorney's Office. My understanding from staff is that the current draft of the sign code would allow for a pole sign of 270 square feet or 300 for monument signs.
Okay, yeah. And so, and honestly, to go back to one of my primary points I made earlier, this is not, what we approved today is not dispositive of your application. It only allows your application to make its way to Planning Commission. And so whatever we approve would make its way to planning. And if planning says, now that they've gotten over this procedural hurdle and they've gotten past the moratorium because they've demonstrated a hardship and they get a variance, I think planning could come in and say, I know Board of Adjustment said that to make it through the gates, they approved 275, but we think 300 or 313 is more appropriate. I think planning could do that. I think our role is just limited to sort of being a gatekeeper and enforcing this moratorium. And I think consistent with the moratorium and the statutory conditions we have to find, 275 makes more sense to me. And again, maybe we'll get some confirmation or input from the municipal counselor, but that's my current understanding, is they would not be prohibited from Planning Commission ultimately approving 313.
So I think the issue before, and I'll certainly defer to Ms. Douglas-Talley, but
Sure.
the issue before the board today is whether or not they should be allowed to proceed with their rezoning application. And so ultimately, it would be up to Planning Commission and then City Council to decide the size of sign that is allowed under the PUD. But yeah, as you said, that the board is acting as sort of a gatekeeper before their application would be allowed to proceed. So the board could make a recommendation about the size of the sign, but ultimately that's going to be a rezoning issue before council.
Right.
All right, yeah, I'll make a motion for a recommendation for 275 to Planning Commission. And
Okay.
then-
We'll see. Sir, you had some comments if you want to introduce yourself.
Paul LaFever, if I may, of 522 Cole Court. I want to understand what you're really offering here. You're talking in terms of a variance to allow a 275 square foot sign?
For purposes of allowing your application to proceed to Planning Commission, yes. And then once it gets to Planning Commission, I think Planning Commission could exercise their discretion to say 270, they might say Board of Adjustment was correct and we think 275 is correct, or they might say 300, 313 is correct. But for the purposes of just getting your application through the procedural hurdle, that's what I'm suggesting.
And my reading of the ordinance and things, and perhaps JJ and council could help me out here, but I'm thinking that Planning Commission can't go beyond what you approved today.
That's not my understanding. And that's why I asked municipal counselor, and Ms. Douglas-Talley can opine as well, but
Right, so I think the issue before the board is whether to grant the variance to allow the application to proceed, because with the moratorium in effect, then the application can't even be accepted and allowed to go to Planning Commission and City Council. So I think the board could grant the variance and I guess have the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship be 275 square feet. Do you have any other thoughts?
yeah.
Yes. Is that all right?
Do you have anything to add, JJ?
Very fine, thank you.
Seems to me like it would need to be either voted up or down And on the size, you could send on a verbal recommendation to the Planning Commission that it not exceed 275, but I think if you limit your variance to 275, the commission is stuck with that number.
Potentially,
Am I right? Okay.
potentially, yeah.
And y'all be allowed to talk to us before the proceedings, so, yeah.
May I
Like I
add,
said, I could be fine with,
and may I add,
possibly.
we'll continue to work with staff to come up with whatever we move forward with
Right.
and per the recommendations as well.
Okay. Yeah, I guess this is sort of just uncharted territory, and so there's probably not a perfect way that we could draft a motion. But at the end of the day, what I don't want is to unnecessarily block your ability to develop this property based on this moratorium, because I'm not sure that this type of application is precisely what was intended by the moratorium. And so I want to find a way to keep this process going, but I just want to make sure we follow the statutory standards and also adhere to the spirit of the moratorium. So with that, board members, I think we could vote to approve the application and then give a recommendation. At least I think that would be sort of the least restrictive and allow you the most flexibility going forward for Planning Commission, instead of arguably limiting your application to 275. I'm okay with that, and hopefully the Planning Commissioners, we've got one here with us, will review this proceeding and acknowledge the concerns that we have, that I've addressed today, and that I think it would be, even under the updated code, limiting your sign to probably 275, and then you'd have to get a variance above that before this board to go to 313. I think once the code is updated, that's probably what would happen. But I don't want to block your application necessarily based on 50 square feet, so.
and we're going to recommend also to city council.
That's true.
So, you know,
And
there's
if this is contrary to
time
the
there where they
moratorium.
can, you know, decide whether they intended
Right.
to block this or not.
That's true.
You know.
Yeah,
And if I may, just to clarify, what the nuance that I'm hearing here is that you're recommending of approval of the application to allow it to go forward.
correct.
But you're making a recommendation of 275 as opposed to a
Like,
standard of 275
Correct.
that JJ's concerned that we won't be able to go above that, or the Planning Commission could not go above that.
Correct. And I sort of was thinking this but didn't express it based on JJ's comments, but thinking a few steps ahead, potentially if we said it's limited to 275 and planning wanted to amend it or modify it to 313, their municipal counselor might say that needs to go back to the Board of Adjustment to approve 313. And so that's why I think we've expressed our concerns on the record. Hopefully planning will see those and adhere to those. I think for our purposes of the Board of Adjustment, 275 is the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. But I think that alone is not going to prevent your application from moving forward. And therefore, I think we can move for a full approval of the application with a recommendation that for our purposes, it would be limited to 275. But the Planning Commission can do whatever it wants. So, and the City Council can do whatever it wants. And if City Council thinks that we were wrong and this is contrary to the moratorium, they can deny your application at City Council. So I'm fine with that as well. What I don't want is for a bunch of folks to start seeing this as a way to short circuit the moratorium. I don't think that's what you're doing, but that's what I'm trying to prevent against also. So.
So that's the language you should include in whatever motion you have. And Laura, I think that's what you've said, is that the motion would be as is stated, that it's to grant a variance to the sign moratorium with the recommendation, but the base of it is, of course, the granting of the variance to the moratorium.
Okay, yeah. And then a recommendation that For the Board of Adjustment purposes, yeah. Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone that wanted to speak on this application? Okay, hearing none. Board members, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move to approve the, just said it too.
Still a variance.
The variance of the moratorium, also with a recommendation to Planning Commission of 275 square foot total.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 14936 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance, with the recommendation that for the purposes of the Board of Adjustment recommends a variance of 275, but it's not necessarily binding on the Planning Commission. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 3, case 14939, request of Moore Penn OKC for a variance to the front building setback in C3 located at 2001 Northwest 23rd Street.
Hello, I'm Ethan Prescott. Address is 4851 LBJ Freeway, Dallas, Texas. We are requesting a variance to Chapter 59, Section 13700.5B2 with regards to the building setback. Currently, the code requires a 10-foot building setback off of all public right-of-ways in the urban design corridor. We have been working with staff on our application and a mechanism of trying to minimize this variance. Given that we're on a corner lot for any type of drive-through use, which is an approved use, it kind of creates somewhat of a hardship because of traffic navigation and circulation with those buildings relative to pickup windows and things of that nature. In that work through with city staff, we actually had a building and a plan that worked. However, the back of the building, I would call it in quotes, was facing towards the street. This building is unique as there's no actual internal seating for customers. It's drive-through oriented only, and so there's not really any front of house. However, the architectural elements that were to make the building look a bit nicer were facing towards the rear of the building in an effort to avoid this variance. In working with the Urban Design Commission and with the staff, their request was for us to go and apply for this variance, given that it would be able to promote the other elements of the Urban Design Commission and the code with activation of the building towards the street front, with making it more pedestrian oriented and making it better looking and better amenity for the overall community. So for that reason, we're requesting the variance. And in our work, we tried to minimize it as much as we can. 12 feet is really the only, off of that 10-foot setback, was the only thing that worked relative to vehicular safety and being able to pick up your drink from the drive-through window and continue to make out of the building. So with that, I'll leave any questions up to the board, and I'm happy to address any comments from anybody in the public as well.
And part of this, I think, was to accommodate some pedestrian traffic. Is that accurate?
We do have a
Like a walk-up window?
We do have a walk-up window on the side of the building that allows for that. However, this was more for the front setback off of 23rd Street, seeing that we're 22 feet off, not 10 feet, which is the requirement in the code and as it's written in the code.
Okay. I'm glad that UDC sort of worked with you to come up with what they thought was the best idea for this. I think this makes sense to me as well. It sort of fits in with the appropriate use of the variance procedure, so I can support it. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. I don't have anyone signed up. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none. Board members, I think we could take a motion.
I'll move approval. This one makes sense to me.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 14939 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, case 14940, request of James Reed for a variance to the accessory building regulations located at 6308 North Anderson Road.
Is the applicant present?
6308 North Anderson Road. I'm here to seek your approval for, we're only over, the building we have is only 16 square feet over. We're here to seek your approval.
I saw that in your application, but the staff report indicates that you're over by 576 feet. So, yeah, not that it necessarily defeats your application, but you've got an existing 1,500 square foot building. I'm sorry. No, that's correct. You have an existing 1,500 square foot building.
Yes, sir.
The code allows you to have, based on the size, 1,524 square feet. And so you only have available 24 square feet, and you're wanting to put a 600 square foot building, so you're over, and you're requesting a variance of 576 square feet. So
Oh, I'm unaware of that, sir.
if this is not accurate, that would help, or if it is accurate, if you could address that square footage. So does that sound accurate? Do you have a 1,500 square foot building already there, it sounds like?
Yeah, I have a 1,500 square foot building.
Okay. So, yeah, so this is saying you only get 24 more square feet under the code. So, not that it necessarily defeats your application. We get some of these all the time, especially with some of these that have some land. You know, people
Yes, sir.
request bigger variances, but it is a variance of 576 square feet and not 16 square feet.
Okay.
Can you sort of address, one of the elements we have to meet is a hardship, so can you kind of address the hardship and your proposed use of this building?
Yes, workshop.
Okay. And what's the existing building? What is that? What do you use that building for?
I don't understand. I understand what you said, Your Honor.
What do you use the current building, the 1,500 square foot, what is that one used for?
A storage building.
Okay. And then one of the unfavorable conditions, let me double check this. Yeah. So one of the variances that you need is because you're proposing the new building to be in front of the rear wall, but the staff report suggests that there's space on your land to put this building behind the rear wall, in which case you wouldn't need a variance from us, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So did you want to work with staff to revise this application to limit the amount of the variance? And usually when we do that, we just continue the application to our next meeting, and you work with staff to address some of the issues that we've raised. So is that, I mean, that's kind of where it's looking like we're going, is to
Oh,
continue
you
this.
saying remove the building?
No.
Move the building to another location?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
And work with staff to see where you could put that. Because staff seems to think you could put that somewhere that you don't need at least one of the variances. And that's something we look at. If there is an alternative and you don't need a variance, then we don't grant a variance. And so if you can move it somewhere that you don't need a variance, then I think we should do that. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a meeting in 2 weeks? I think, I assume we do.
The schedule's
It's
on
a
the agenda.
November meeting.
November 4th?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we move this hearing to November 4th for your application, would you be able to attend?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what I would recommend, board members. You might have a different opinion, but that's sort of what I recommend. Okay.
I'd like to see a little bit of a revised site plan,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm going to move we continue to November 4.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to continue the application case 14940 to November 4th. Once you're able to, cast your votes. Okay, so the application's been continued to November 4th. I would reach out to city staff, they're very helpful, and work with them on what you can do to minimize the variance and where you can move this building so you might not even need at least one of the variances.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 5, case 14899, special exception of Kevin Snow to allow home sharing at 3304 Rock Creek Road.
There he is.
Hello,
Hello.
Kevin Snow for 3308 West Rock Creek Road. I'm here seeking the Airbnb permit for 3304 West Rock Creek Road.
I think this one's been, you reduced it a bit.
Yes, we've reduced the number of guests and the number of bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, I believe 14 guests. And we have enough parking for 10 vehicles, as we've stated in the past, as well as, because we live next door, we have an extra large driveway that other guests can use if necessary
Okay.
to keep them off the street.
And then I think, board members, if you remember, this one got continued out of a courtesy? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we were
The main.
in your favor at the last meeting, and then, yeah, we had to continue it. But board members, any questions or comments? We've heard it a couple times, so
Yep.
it's been revised a couple times, so notice has gone out, all of that. So next would be a period of time. I think for this one, probably 2 years, just given the size of it,
And he lives right next door. Too,
Yeah,
so,
that's
that
true.
helps.
and no opposition. So that I've seen. Is there anyone that was hoping to speak on this application? Other than the applicant? Okay, hearing none. I don't know if board members wanted to impose any conditions, but presumably the number of guests and as it's presented in here, plus off-street parking only, but
Yeah. I'll move approval, 2 years, advertising to include your self-imposed.
Can you repeat that, I'm sorry?
Probably not. I'm going to move approval for 2 years, but I want you to advertise the maximum 14 guests,
Yes,
4 bedroom, just like you stated, and I'll move approval on
Okay.
that.
that's fine, thank you.
Second.
got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14899 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, subject to the conditions in the application, and the property will be advertised as off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 6 is case 14907. It's an application for a renewal of a special exception to allow home sharing at 529 Northwest 22nd Street.
Hello, my name is Adela Adelia, and I'm trying to renew for home sharing 529 Northwest 22nd Street.
Okay, and another one that we've seen a couple of times, board members.
All right.
It looked like city staff was satisfied that the host is going to occupy the property at the time of the rental. And so, based on this revised staff report, and so I think that addresses the concerns that we had at the last meeting. And so, HP recommended approval as well. I think 4 guests, 2 bedrooms. I think did you have off-street parking on this one, or was it on-street parking?
Once again,
What was the parking on this one?
on the street.
That's right. And then, but you'd been doing it for a year, and we haven't heard any problems. So I think we were okay at the last meeting, to approve this, subject to staff determining that occupying the property. So I'm okay with this. It would be a period of time, so maybe another 2 years, just since this was a little bit unusual. But if anyone has other ideas on timing.
Nope.
Okay. I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone that was hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move approval of 14907 for the reasons that it meets the requirements for a special exception for a period of 2 years.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14907 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, case 14937, special exception of McKay Dressler to allow home sharing at 4117 Northwest 21st Street.
My name's McKay Dressler, address 4117 Northwest 21st Street. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about the property. It's a 2-bed, 1-bath residence with a 1-car garage. There's no homeowners association in that neighborhood. The parking, it has a long driveway, can easily fit 2 cars. There's also available space in front of the house. It has wide streets. And then we ask that you grant this special exception for home sharing, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
I appreciated the rules that you were imposing. This makes sense to me, especially in this area. So I appreciate that you incorporated all these rules. That obviously helps your application. Looks like you're limiting it to 5 visitors at any time. It looked like kind of a smaller house, right? So
Yes, it's 2 bedrooms. We can easily fit 2 people in each bedroom, and then we have a futon in case there's like 1 extra person or like 2 small children possibly, so.
okay. I don't
8
know.
years?
I don't know that we need any conditions on this one. It seemed like, I don't want to say that we incorporate all the ones that are in the application, because then she can't change our advertising. And so I think it sort of makes sense. I think the size of the property limits how many people are going to be there anyway, and the parking situation. So I don't know that we need any additional considerations. Any questions or comments, board members, before we open up to other speakers?
No, I just wish I could impose some of these rules on my neighbors.
Time, what were you thinking about on a time?
I'm sorry.
What were you thinking on time? 2 years, 1 year, what?
I would like to at least try for a year. It's been a rental property before, but a longer time. I want to see how it does for a shorter period of time, so.
I think,
That's a new one.
yeah, and potentially 2 years, similar to the last ones, just to,
That would
give
be
some flexibility. Yeah, and there's nothing that I foresee as controversial on this one, so yeah, I can get on board with 2 years. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else that was hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I think we could take a motion.
I'll move approval, case number 14937, for the reasons that it meets the requirements for a special exception, period of 2 years.
I'll second it.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14937 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8, case 14938, application for special exception of Abe Oliver to allow home sharing at 1720 Northwest 42nd.
Hello, I'm Abe Oliver. My address is 2608 Shady Tree Lane, Edmond, Oklahoma. And I'm here today to request a special exemption for home sharing for our property. I can give you any description you need about it, just whatever questions you guys have for me.
Yeah, if you had just an overview of the property.
It's approximately 1,100 square feet. It was built in 1950, so it's 71 years old. It's 2 bedroom, 1 bath. It's pretty much standard for that area. It backs to a creek and a green belt behind it, so that's one thing that drew us to it. I think it's exceptional to that area. And so in the past, I've traveled a lot for work, and I found a hard time, especially in the past, pre-home sharing, I had a hard time finding a place to stay long-term that was furnished outside of a hotel. When you travel a lot, hotel becomes less than desirable. So we thought that this would be a good alternative. That'll be, who we're targeting are people traveling to the area for business. And so we just think that that's an ideal location for that.
All right. And I appreciated the comprehensive kind of overview that you gave in your application as well. That was very helpful. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. Is there anyone other than the applicant that was hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'd be good on this one for 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll move approval for 2 years.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14938 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 9 is case 14941. It's a special exception to allow home sharing in the R1 district at 1536 Northwest 31st Street.
Hello, my name is Nick Reynolds-John. I'm here to represent the property at 1536 Northwest 31st. The property is located between 2 apartment buildings, which allow long-term rentals at the units. And in the nearby neighborhood, there's no hotels or anything in the immediate vicinity. These buildings, it's a duplex. They're both 3-bedroom, 1-bath, so they allow for larger family accommodations. There's a private backyard that's fenced in, so we can allow pets as well, which are typically not allowed at hotels. So we think that larger families that come to visit their children, going to the universities, or coming to visit OKC can stay at this property and stay together as one cohesive unit. I can answer any questions about the property.
Is this the next application we have? Is that the other side of the duplex?
No, the next application is for a separate property.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this area, it looked like there was off-street parking available.
There is on-street parking, but we have, I don't know if you have the application, correct?
Yes.
So on the bottom right image, it has the parking lot with the fence. We can accommodate up to about 6 or 7 cars in there, just within that lot itself. It's kind of a weird overview there, but you can have 2 cars park really comfortably facing east-west, and you can have 4 cars park north-south on that lot.
And was this the duplex? You'll have to forgive me. We've got a few applications here, but this was the duplex. And so is the home sharing tenant going to have access to that full parking lot, or is the other part of the duplex going to also park there?
So both duplexes, oh, sorry.
No, I was just looking at, is the parking lot the grassed area fenced in kind of?
Correct, yes, sir. Yeah, that's the property's parking lot, yeah.
For both sides of the duplex?
It's a upstairs, downstairs duplex. Yeah, as you can see at the top left, that's the unit itself. They have separate entrances for the top and bottom.
And is there a long-term tenant in the other side, or?
There was a long-term tenant there, and we used to live on the top floor. So these both have long-term renters in there, or, that was my personal home.
Okay. And this is just renting out one side for home sharing?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just that area does potentially have some parking issues, so if we can get off-street parking, I think that would help.
Yeah, there won't be any parking on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because that can be a little congested in there.
Yeah, so I'd kind of like to condition this one if we approve it, on off-street parking only. Any other questions or comments, board members? Okay. And I should have, well, we didn't get I didn't get a map of the locations.
No, Sandy's
And-
not here.
Yeah, and so how far is this from the other application? Okay.
They're about 2 miles apart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's located on Classen, is the main road, Classen and 31st. And then the other property, the Northwest 23rd, is located on, is that 44 and 23rd, the highway there?
Okay, yeah, okay. There you go. Thank you.
Paula brought it by, so thank you, Paula.
Okay, gotcha. And Mike, did you want to see the map, or you, okay, okay, sounds good. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone that was hoping to speak on this other than the applicant's representative? Okay. Hot area, I was thinking kind of a max of 2 years, this one as well, so.
But I'll move approval, case number 14941, for the reasons that it meets the requirements for a special exception period of 2 years, advertised as off-street parking only.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14941 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, and it'll be advertised as having off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you, sir. And I'll just remain standing for the next one.
Sure.
Item 10, case 14942, special exception for home sharing by the same applicant at 3324 Northwest 23rd Street.
So a similar story, but this property we purchased distressed. It was originally an abandoned home along that main street. A lot of homeless were in the house and destroyed everything. So we brought the house up to code, redid the electrical for the unit, and just tried to generally improve the property. And a similar story to the duplex on 31st, we want to provide like larger affordable housing for these families. This house is closer to the interstate, so these families can actually easily go up to the medical facilities. If a family needs to visit a loved one in the at Integris, or even visit downtown. It has a front and a backyard that's fully fenced in, that they have access to. Parking is in the back of the unit, so there's no parking along 23rd and no parking in Sonic. It's butted up right against Sonic on the west side, but we have parking in the rear of the property. Yeah. It's a duplex as well. They're 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
And then the other side has a long-term tenant, or will?
No, sir. Those will both be, on both sides of the duplex will be short-term rentals. That's the request at least. But we live nearby and we have security cameras placed all around the property, and digital locks on the property as well, so we can make sure the building is secured and constantly monitored.
I'm totally fine with this one. Surrounded by commercial and Sonic and 23rd Street, so yeah. So you let her rip.
I've got some concerns that are not really fair to put on you because it's not your own application, but I wish this were only one half of that duplex.
Oh, only one half of the duplex instead of?
Instead of the whole thing. And in addition to that, in the past, I think we've required a special exception for each side. And
So, yeah, on the tax assessor website, it's only listed as a single property, even though it's zoned R2. So we only set in a single application just because that's what's listed on the tax assessor website. It's listed as 3324 Northwest 23rd as a single address.
So
They're doing both sides. They will have to get two separate licenses.
Okay.
so how that's been interpreted for us in the past is to get two separate special exceptions as well.
I don't think we realized it was a duplex either.
Okay, yeah, I didn't, that's,
Okay.
when he mentioned that, it was like, wait a minute. So, on the property, on the county property records, it's listed as one property, which makes sense. But the addresses, is it like A and B or something?
We have notes on there, AB, but they also have notes 3324 and 3326. It's both listed on there, or both displayed on there.
So the application in front of us right now is 3324 only.
Correct, yeah.
So this would not give you a special exception for a 3326.
Okay, so we would have to put in a separate application for
Right.
that property.
For that
Okay.
one, yeah. That makes more sense
Okay,
now, okay. And then, so just so I understand for this
Mhm.
half of the duplex, how many bedrooms is this, and then how many bedrooms is the other?
They're both 2-bedroom, 1 bath. They're mirrored,
Okay,
yeah.
and then enough parking on each side for probably 1 or 2 cars?
Correct. There is, on the lot itself, there's not a picture of the lot there, but if you go to the map, there's enough parking for 2 cars east-west and 2 cars north-south. So you can have a total of about 4 cars in the property comfortably.
So if we restricted it to off-street parking only,
Correct.
would that cause
That's-
any problems?
That's not a problem.
Where do they take access for that parking?
So we currently have an easement through Sonic. So
Oh, okay.
we enter through Sonic, and then you can open up the gate and drive in and close it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, that's a separate case later to get on street, or not on street, but off the 23rd.
Okay, I might give you a little more scrutiny on 3326, but I think this one standing on its own, 3324, makes sense to me, so.
Could I address the concerns for 3326 for that application now, or should I wait till that application actually reaches the floor?
you might as well wait. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Keep
it's,
a couple times before then.
yeah, and it might not be something that you can address, but it's just this, even on our map here, this area is getting pretty saturated with home sharing.
Okay,
The city, when they approved home sharing, at least my interpretation of it is that they wanted it to sort of be rare and not very commonplace. And, when you're doing both, ideally, we'll do one side of a duplex with a long-term tenant and the other side with home sharing, ideally, if we're even going to allow home sharing. But when you start having these multi-unit properties and all of them for home sharing, we start to kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
okay.
So again, I don't know that that's something you even can address, but now we've kind of foreshadowed it. Maybe you can think up some stuff if you even want to pursue that application. So,
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Or a motion?
It's your turn, Mike. I'll make a motion. Move approval, case number 14942, for the reasons that it meets the statutory requirements for a special exception for a period of 2 years, and no on-street parking, but I think that's
Second.
pretty obvious.
Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14942 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, and it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Council.
And then if you bring a new application for that other property, I think you might clarify some of the parking, so
Okay.
how they're going to have access and how that's going to interact with what you've just gotten approved for.
Okay,
So how there's going to be accommodation for all of the parking for both units. So
right.
that'd be helpful too. So.
can do.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, item 11, 14943 is application for home sharing at 3123 Northwest 17th Street.
Thank you, guys. My name is Bogey Ramirez. I live at 3209 Northwest 18th Street, approximately a block behind this property. I'm applying for special exemption to home share. This was recently purchased in June. We've remodeled, cleaned up the property. It was pretty run down backyard. I mean, I filled up 4 dumpsters just with the outside trash. We walk the neighborhood, so I mean, the house now looks beautiful. We've got a lot of people that live in the neighborhood that make comments like, hey, whenever you guys get that up and going, depending on what you do, we'd like to have a place for our family for the Thanksgiving holidays. So it's a nice neighborhood. We just want to home share it and just keep it as nice as it is. I toyed with renting it, but I just think it keeps up better if we home share because I can maintain it.
I think I should, there we go, yeah, that was a 2-bedroom, okay. You plan to advertise a maximum of 5 guests?
I thought there's a 3-bedroom, 2 baths, so I believe it's 6. Should have said 6. I don't know if whenever.
I have your other application pulled up.
Okay.
So 3-bedroom, 8 guests for this one?
There you go, yeah, that'd be max. It's got parking for at least 6 cars, 4 comfortably without backing in and out and moving, but you could probably put 8 cars in that if you needed to.
Okay.
That should never be the case.
Yeah, I'd want to limit this to off-street, just given the area. It doesn't seem like a problem either, so.
No, I'd prefer, like I said, we walk the neighborhood, and
Yeah.
that's one of the favorite things about Linwood is there's a lot, it's mainly off-street. So
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
want to add to
Okay.
that.
Board members, any questions or comments? Okay, I don't have anyone signed up, nor do I see anyone else here, so, but for the purposes of the record, are there any ghosts that want to make any haunting comments as we get closer to Halloween? Seeing none, I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion. And both of these, again, given the density that we're getting in these areas, I was thinking 2 years, but that's just me, so, okay. I don't know whose turn it is to make a motion, but.
You're going back and forth. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Mike. Yeah, it's Mike's turn.
Okay, I'll move approval, and did we say 3 years?
I said
Okay.
2, but I can get on board with 3.
Okay, I move approval for 3 years.
That'll
Thank
give us
you.
one less one in 2 years. Second.
I did want to comment on the previous guys, because that's in our neighborhood, and that house was terrible, so I do thank him. I
Yeah.
didn't want to interrupt it, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, both of them. I mean, I think taking some of these dilapidated buildings, you know,
Yeah.
there's different dynamics at play, and we need more rental housing in the city, but if home sharing is what it's going to take to get some of these properties brought up,
That's,
then,
yeah.
you know, it sort of is what it is. But, okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve special exception in case 14943 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years. And was there a condition that it's off-street parking only? Okay,
Yes.
on the condition we advertise as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Okay, item 12 is case 14944, request for special exception by the same applicant for home sharing at 2925 Northwest 12th Street.
That's correct. This is, I've had this property for 3 years. It's operated as a rental. On occasion, it can be difficult to re-rent, so I've recently redone the floors, and it's a good-looking home. People typically take care of it, but I would like to be able to pull from, hopefully, the State Fair grounds. Now that I've realized that there's a lot of people renting RVs and things, I think it'd be a great opportunity to let people stay close to the fair, still have access to what they're doing for events, and
Okay.
also keep my property up.
Yeah. And this was the smaller 2-bedroom.
Yeah, this would be the 5, I think. Yeah, that's max.
Okay. And then, did this have parking?
It's got at least 3 cars you could park in the driveway with no issue.
Okay. So if we conditioned it, it wouldn't be a problem?
Nope.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. Is there anyone hoping to speak on this application, other than the applicant? Hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 14944 for the reasons it meets the conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years. And no off-street parking, since the other one was 3.
No on-street parking?
Thank you.
No off-street parking, yeah. or on-street parking.
I knew what you meant. Second.
Only can park on that really long driveway.
I don't know if the municipal counselor is going to come slap us if we use the wrong language. So got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14944 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for special exception for a period of 3 years on the condition that it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, lady.
Thank you. Good luck.
You guys take care.
I'll go with option B on
I thought that might happen.
after last year.
Next item on the agenda is adoption of the 2022 Board of Adjustment meeting schedule. Let me pull these up. Yeah, it looked, option B was the one with less breaks. Is that accurate? So you just want to work a little extra hard?
Yeah, I mean, if I can't make it, I can't make it. Some of those meetings just get, I mean, BOA is not near as bad as planning commission, but.
Yeah. The breaks, I like the breaks because I
Yeah.
don't like missing meetings, and so if I can plan being out of town around.
I can do breaks too.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm more concerned with planning commission on this schedule than.
Oh,
Board of
yeah.
Adjustment.
Yeah, that's true. You guys missing meetings will have a 100-item agenda at the next one, so. But we don't typically, even when we have a time off, it's not too crazy, so. Is there any preference, Mr. Voorhees? Okay. All right, so it sounds like A is what we're going with?
Chair wants A, I'll vote A.
I'll vote aye.
Okay.
Motion A.
Okay.
Second.
Motion is second to approve option A for the 2022 calendar year Board of Adjustment schedule. Cast your votes. And I guess city staff, there's no problem with either of those from your perspective? Okay.
Both are
I'll
fine
be
with
here
us.
anyways.
Yeah. Where we, those, and it's approved. Okay, next item on the agenda, additional items. I don't have anything, communication to board reports. I don't have anything, citizens to be heard. Don't see anyone. And other business, board members, staff, any other business? All right, we're adjourned.